talk to you about the environmental public health implications of industrial food animal production, and then moving on to through evaluation. So this is the model of what public health is. And then if you apply that to the air, water, soil, but not just that, also maybe the built environment, like housing, and also food safety, that is what environmental public health is. So I am a research assistant and a fellow at the Center for Livable Future at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And at the center, we focus on research. First of all, our focus is on the links between the environment, human health, food production, and diet. And we're also concerned about climate change and equity. So not only do we conduct our own research, but we fund other people's research that's connected to the food system. We conduct policy analysis, communication, not only to consumers, but also to policymakers. And then also education. There are courses at the School of Public Health on the food system, which we feel is very important because a lot of students of public health are not really aware of how the food system is currently set up and how that affects public health. And then also with education, we like to speak to other courses that are not our courses, but to get the word out to other students and then talk to communities. Slide. So in the US, we produce 8.7 billion broiler chickens per year, 100 million hogs, 100 million cattle. That's every year. At the center, we use the term industrial food animal production instead of CAFO, only because CAFO is a regulatory term, and there are sites that use these methods that are not technically a CAFO. As in Peach Bottom, you're familiar with, if the hog operation is not technically a CAFO, it's using the same production methods, so it's going to have the same associated hazards in the environment and with public health. So that's why we use that term, just so that it kind of encompasses any food animal production that is using those methods. So it means pretty much the same thing as CAFO, and it just means thousands of animals are together, they're in tight quarters, they are fed engineered feeds, they're not out on pasture, and they have highly controlled environments. Sometimes the lights are on all the time, sometimes the lights are never on. There's controlled ventilation usually that's not open walls. It's a confined building with every aspect of the environment is highly controlled. Slide. Oh, here we go. So just to show the trends over time, this is a chart that shows broiler production. The line that's going up is the millions of pounds of broilers produced in the US every year, and this chart goes from 1975 to 1995. So that's the line that's going up. Chicken has gone down in price, and people, it is presented as a healthy thing to eat, eating poultry instead of red meat. So we produce a lot more of it because it's a lot more popular with consumers. The line that's going down is the number of farms that are producing these broilers. So, you can see that it's get big or get out, and that's how you do it. And I don't know if you're familiar with the contract farming, where the big poultry industries and also the hog industries, cattle just to a little bit lesser extent, but mostly it's the hog and broiler industries. This is pretty much how most of the food is produced that is on the grocery store shelves and in restaurants, where the farmer is contracting with a corporation. So the animals come, they are in these buildings, and the farmer does not have a choice as to what they are fed. A lot of the feeds have antibiotics in them, and I'll get to that at a later point. But that's why it's get big or get out, and that's how it works, is you have a contract with a corporation, and there's the positive part to the farmer is that there's little risk if the contract continues. But if the corporation changes the terms of the contract or they cancel the contract, then a lot of times the farmer's already in debt because they had to take out a mortgage to build the buildings, and the only way they can pay for it is if the contract continues. If the contract is changed or canceled, then the farmer is at risk of losing their farm because they have mortgaged their farm to pay for the buildings. So the way this system is set up is not pro-farmer, in my opinion. Okay, next slide. So this is not trend over time. This is a snapshot of the hog industry in 2008. So the red color, that shows the number of operations in 2008 in the thousands. So you can see on the bottom is the size of the operation. So the largest number of operation is between 1 and 99 hogs. That's, probably small farmers with mixed use. They probably have crops and animals. But that's less than 1% of the hogs that are getting to the market. So if you look at the blue on the right side, you have 24% of the inventory and 61% of the inventory. If you add that, it's 85. So 85% of the hogs produced in the US are produced in farms that have 2,000 hogs or more. And as you can see, about 61% are produced on farms that have 5,000 or more hogs. So you can see that it's a very lopsided system where most of the food, the animals that are coming from these types of operations, very large operations. And then this just shows in the hog industry, it's pretty much the same trend as in the broiler industry. The yellow line that's going down is the number of hog operations, and the blue line is going up is hogs per operation. So again, it's get big or get out. And getting back to Terry's point about the mobile slaughter units, because of the contracting, the corporations who are contracting with the farmers who are raising the animals, they own the processing plants for the most part. So they don't need the small independent farmers. They don't need their product, and they don't want their product. So that's why the mobile slaughtering units are so important, so that the small farmers can still get their animals to market. Slide. Thank you. I don't have updated data for the cattle, but 500 plus head operations, they made up 2% of operations in 1997, and it was 29% of US production. Only 4 years later, it was 3% of operations and 40% of US production, and I'm sure that trend is continuing. I just don't have the completely updated information. Slide. So what are we feeding food animals? This is important because what we feed them affects what's in them, and we're eating them, and then it's also getting into the environment. So let me just go over what we're feeding them. Because of the tight quarters of where the animals are raised, they are given low levels of antimicrobials and antibiotics. And I'm going to talk about that and the implications for public health in a little while. There's also byproducts of slaughtered animals and rendered animals, animal waste, and I'll get into why this is a problem. Slide. So how much waste? And if you can keep clicking, I don't know how many times you have to click. I think one more time. Oh, one more time. Okay. So the amount of waste I was glad Maria mentioned comparing the waste that is produced in her township where she lives and from this hog farm, because this is it really surprises people. So in the U.S., humans produce around 7 million dry tons of waste. And there's a very important reason why we send it to water treatment facilities. That is one of the most important revelations in public health, and in developing countries it causes lots of disease where we don't treat our waste, because our waste gets into the water where we're washing things and drinking the water and all of that. So luckily in the US we treat our human waste, and there's about 4 million dry tons that is applied to land, so that would be like the sludge issue. But the animal waste is 287 million dry tons, and this is not treated. No, I am not aware of a single CAFO that sends its waste to a treatment facility. It doesn't happen. It's too expensive. So we are not, I don't think we're properly dealing with the implications of having this many animals and this much waste. And the problem is, another problem, is that it is economically beneficial to companies to have the sites where they contract with the farmers, where they're either having them raising the hogs or having them raising the poultry. It's beneficial for the corporation to have those sites close together, because then they can go pick them all up and process them. They've got their processing plant right near it. I live in Maryland. I'm from Pennsylvania, but I live in Maryland, and we have tons of poultry farms on the Eastern Shore. And there's a reason for that, because then they can process them right there, and that's good for the corporation, but it's not good for the environment, because that waste, there's not enough cropland to absorb that waste. So the waste is being spread, there's too much waste being spread on the cropland, and then it's running off into the groundwater, and that's a huge problem. So the problem with way too much waste, and it's being concentrated in different areas around the U.S. So how does it get into the environment? These are pictures of hog facilities, and the picture on the left, where that is a huge lagoon with a smaller lagoon behind it, and then 3 hog houses. And then this picture, the middle part, you can see all those houses, and then you can see in the background there's more houses to the right, and then to the left there's more houses. That's exactly what I'm talking about. They want them close together. Not good for the environment. Good for the corporation, not good for the environment. So there are so many lagoons in a small area, and there's not enough cropland to properly spread all of this manure. So that's a big problem. So it's sprayed. There's a lot of runoff. The lagoons, there have been lagoons that leak or burst. So that untreated waste is going straight into the environment, straight into our groundwater. That's the big problem. And also storms and floods. These lagoons are not built to withstand a storm where the lagoon doesn't overrun. There was a storm, a hurricane, I forget when it was, but there's a lot of hog farms in North Carolina, and a hurricane came up, and I mean pretty much all the lagoons, the waste just spilled out right into the environment. So that's another big problem. Slide. Okay. So here's more waste spraying. You can see on the bottom picture, if there's a pool of manure like that, that's not good, because it's going to rain. Even if it doesn't rain, it's still going to run off. And then when it rains, it runs off even more. So when you see pools like that in pictures where waste has been sprayed, it's not good for the environment at all. Slide. And this is poultry litter. Poultry litter is a little bit different than the hog waste, because it's usually it's pretty dry. The problem with the poultry is that most poultry raised in these kinds of operations, the antimicrobial of choice for poultry is actually arsenic, because the birds are not alive for long enough for the arsenic to kill them. Arsenic is less toxic to poultry than it is to humans. So the poultry survive being fed the arsenic, and it actually kills some of their intestinal bugs. So, but the arsenic, the thing that's a little bit mysterious is, where does the corporation think the arsenic is going? Is it in the waste? That's a problem. Is it in the meat? That's a problem. It's actually in both places. So, 2 problems, big problems. Slide. The other way that waste and bacteria and dust and all sorts of things get into the environment is through the ventilation system. These are huge, powerful fans. If the fans shut off, the animals will die pretty soon. Like I said, the environment is highly, highly controlled. So these are very powerful fans blowing all this stuff right into the air that we breathe. Slide. So now on to the implications of that. Slide. So the environmental media, the things that we're worried about air, water, soil, and the food products. In the air, we're worried about particulate matter, toxins,